UN Climate Conference signals beginning of the end of fossil fuel era. The United Nations Climate Change Conference in the United Arab Emirates, from November 30 to December 12, has ended with an agreement that signals the beginning of the end of the fossil fuel era by laying the ground for a swift, just and equitable transition, underpinned by deep emissions cuts and scaled-up finance. The conference said in a press release that intense negotiations demonstrated global solidarity among the nearly 200 governments that are parties to the climate change conference. It said negotiators came together in Dubai with the decision on the world's first global stocktake to ratchet up climate action before the end of the decade, with the overarching aim to keep the global temperature limit of 1.5 degrees Celsius within reach.
Whilst we didn't turn the page on the fossil fuel era in Dubai, this outcome is the beginning of the end,
said UN Climate Change Executive Secretary Simon Style in his closing speech. Now all governments and businesses need to turn these pledges into real economy outcomes, without delay. The global stocktake is considered the central outcome as it contains every element that was under negotiation and can now be used by countries to develop stronger climate action plans due by 2025. The stocktake recognizes the science that indicates global greenhouse gas emissions need to be cut 43% by 2030, compared to 2019 levels, to limit global warming to 1.5 degrees Celsius. But it notes parties are off track when it comes to meeting their Paris Agreement goals. The stocktake calls on parties to take actions towards achieving, at a global scale, a tripling of renewable energy capacity and doubling energy efficiency improvements by 2030. The list also includes accelerating efforts towards the phase-down of unabated coal power, phasing out inefficient fossil fuel subsidies, and other measures that drive the transition away from fossil fuels in energy systems, in a just, orderly and equitable manner, with developed countries continuing to take the lead. The press release said, in the short term, parties are encouraged to come forward with ambitious, economy-wide emission reduction targets, covering all greenhouse gases, sectors and categories and aligned with the 1.5 degree Celsius limit in their next round of climate action plans, which are known as nationally determined contributions by 2025. The two-week-long conference held at the Expo City Dubai got underway with the World Climate Action Summit, which brought together 154 heads of states and government. Parties reached a historic agreement on the operationalization of the Loss and Damage Fund and funding arrangements, the first time a substantive decision was adopted on the first day of the conference. Commitments to the fund started coming in moments after the decision was gavelled, totaling more than $700 million to date. There was more progress on the loss and damage agenda, with an agreement also reached that the UN Office for Disaster Risk Reduction and the UN Office for Project Services will host the Secretariat of the Santiago Network for Loss and Damage. This platform will catalyze technical assistance to developing countries that are particularly vulnerable to the adverse effects of climate change. Parties agreed on targets for the global goal on adaptation and its framework, which identify where the world needs to get to in order to be resilient to the impacts of a changing climate, and to assess countries' efforts. The GGA framework reflects a global consensus on adaptation targets and the need for finance, technology and capacity building support to achieve them.